Some say that's the path David took down. He may have had some sheep because he was a shepherd from Bethlehem. Bethlehem's not all that far. And so when Goliath and the army of the Philistines came off the hills from that side, and the Israelites had their line right here, you know what happened if you go to 1 Samuel 17. In 1 Samuel 17, it says, David rose early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper and took the provisions and went as Jesse had commanded him. When he came to the encampment, as the host was going out to the battle line shouting the war cry, the Israelites and the Philistines drew up for battle, army against army. So the Philistines are going to be toward the west. And of course, on this side, you've got Judah to the east. The Israelites are to the east because they're trying to protect Bethlehem and that whole area. They're trying to protect their land. The Philistines are trying to get that way, trying to go that way. And of course, Saul wants to stop them. Saul's the king at the time. And David's probably somewhere between maybe 15 and 18. He's just a shepherd boy, as you know. So David left things in charge of the keeper, and he ran to the ranks and greeted his brothers. He's the youngest of all his brothers, right? And as he talked with them, behold, the champion Philistine of Gath, Goliath, comes out. And the people here were very much afraid. This guy's like 9 feet tall. 9 feet tall. And there's been some archaeological evidence of giants in the area. So this is a huge guy. And it says, his brothers, the men of Israel, said, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And the king will enrich the man who kills Goliath with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and his father won't have to pay any taxes. So they're bribing anyone who's going to come out and take on Goliath, because what's the wager here? Whoever wins between Goliath and the one Israelite, the other side's just going to give up. So if Goliath wins, the Israelites are going to give up. If whoever takes on Goliath wins, then the Philistines are going to give up. So David said to the men who stood by him, what shall be done for the man who kills the Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? Because, Goliath is cussing and degrading the Israelites and saying, your God's nothing. You can't beat me. Come out and try and take me on. And what David says, for who is this uncircumcised Philistine who defies the living God of Israel? Who is this guy? And so he says he's going to take him on. What does Saul say? No, you're just a young kid. You really can't do it. But David says, look, I've killed lions. I've killed bears. I'll kill this guy. So Saul says to him, what? Take my armor. Put on my armor. And he tries his armor on. And David says, I haven't really tested this armor. I don't really feel good in it. So I'm not going to wear the armor. However, what you see a few verses earlier, what kind of armor does Goliath have on? Does anyone know? This is from 1 Samuel 17 and verse 5. He said he had a helmet of bronze on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail or bronze scale armor, serpentine armor. What does that make you think of? The serpent, right? He's a symbol of evil at this point. He's wearing this serpentine armor, and Goliath says, I'm just going to go out there and take him on. So he goes into this stream right here. He's coming down off that hill, and he just goes down into this stream, and he picks out 5 smooth stones. Why don't we go in the stream? We'll check it out. Somewhere in here, he gathers these 5 stones, and then he goes out into the field with a sling. And what does Goliath say to him? Do you remember? What am I, a dog? You're going to come at me with sticks and stones? Now keep in mind, Goliath also has an armor bearer. So he's got a guy with a big shield ahead of him as well. And at one point, Goliath stands in front of the armor bearer and basically says, go ahead, you're going to try and take me on with that? And what does David do? He doesn't just do this, he runs at him. He runs straight at him. And what do you think David's thinking at this point, by the way? Most of us are probably thinking, that guy is so big. There's no way I'm taking this guy on. David's probably thinking, that guy's so big, there's no way I can miss. Right? I mean, he had developed this skill with a sling. And so he just runs at him with the sling, hurls it at him, hits him where? Right in the forehead, and it says, the text says it embedded in his forehead. And he went straight down, and then David took his sword, Goliath's sword, and cut his head off. Then what happened? What do you think the Philistines did? They ran. They ran toward Ashdod. And what did the Israelites do? They chased him. They ran after him. There was a rout that went on. So this was a great victory for Israel, pulled off by a kid who didn't have any real weapons but his sling ability and God. And he took down their greatest enemy. Now, when you hear preachers talk about this, what do preachers say? Oh, God can slay the dragons or the giants in your life, right? You probably hear that. Is that really the application of this passage? Now, it's like when we go on the Sea of Galilee. We'll go on the Sea of Galilee in a few days. You know how the storm comes up? And Jesus calms the storm. So what do preachers normally say? Well, Jesus can calm the storms of your life. Is that really what that's teaching? No, that's not what that's teaching at all. In fact, we'll talk about it when we're on the Sea of Galilee. What is this telling us? Well, it's an historical event. It really happened. And David, of course, is in the line of the Messiah. And it's just telling us what happened. It shows what a man of great faith can do. He's not relying on a lot of technology. He's not relying on his own strength. He is relying on some of his own skill, right? He developed skill and he used it. But it has nothing to do with God's going to slay the giants in your life. It's an historical event that shows that David, who was a man after God's own heart, though he was flawed, is going to trust God and do what's right. And God actually gave him the victory and gave all of Israel the victory. Now, as Ellah said before, after that occurred and the Philistines were on the run, that set up the opportunity under his son Solomon to have the largest kingdom Israel has ever had. Because he put the Philistines on the run. Egypt was not a strong nation at that point. Neither were the folks up north. So that's where Israel could really expand and be very prosperous. But what happened to them is they became very prosperous. They forgot about God. They started worshiping other gods. I think our biggest problem in America today is really prosperity. I mean, I want everybody to be prosperous, but the problem is prosperity makes us think that we could do it all ourselves. It makes us say, we don't need God. We'll do it ourselves. It's like what happened in the book of Judges. People got prosperous. They sinned because they then forgot about God, and then God judged them. And then they repented, and they came back to God, and then they got prosperous again, and then they sinned, and then the cycle goes on and on and on. And in America, we're in the we're on the downside of prosperity because we've forgotten about God. We're going to be judged, and then hopefully we'll come back. But I think the main point of this is it's an historical event of a man who is in the bloodline of the Messiah, who trusted God and did great things, even though he was a sinner like everyone else. And it's happened right here. Right here. We know that for sure. And once you get a shot of that path coming down, that's the path he probably came down right there, because the Israelites had a camp on the top of this hill.